Hello again. In these two lessons, lessons 1.2 and 1.3, you're going to be learning about probably the two most important building blocks on which your ability to express yourself in French is going to be established. You're going to be learning in the first lesson, 1.2, the first 5 of the 60 most commonly used verbs in any language. You'll be learning habiter, and as you can see, the accompanying gestures as well that I want you to perform to help you to remember these words. Habiter, faire, écouter, laver, dire. You'll also, in 1.3, be learning the singular personal pronouns. That is to say, the ones who are performing the action, which is represented by those 5 gestures I just made. You'll be learning to talk about yourself. You'll be learning to talk to someone else. You'll be learning to speak to someone else and show them particular deference or respect. You'll be learning to talk to someone else, but about someone else and someone else's activities, whether it be a male or a female. So that's the content of these two lessons, 1.2 and 1.3. Now, very important, I showed you some gestures that you're going to be performing. They're these gestures right here. These gestures it's critical that you imitate them. You must be an active learner. A passive learner will not retain the information presented. As you perform these gestures, the fact of doing a motor activity as you say the word greatly will enhance your retention of that word, your ability to recall, to remember that word. So, awkward as it may feel at times, make sure you imitate me as you perform these gestures. The two most important tasks you have are to imitate my gestures and to imitate the things I say, to repeat them when I want you to do so. And then secondly, very importantly, you must understand that as you watch the videos that begin each of the two lessons, 1.2 and 1.3, the instructional videos, which will be entirely in French, understand that I do not expect you to understand all that I'm saying. Don't get upset or nervous if you don't know what's going on, if you don't know what I'm saying as I'm talking to you. I will always speak to you within the lessons in the target language exclusively, no use of English whatsoever. And even if you think you're not understanding, and that's probably true at first, you're still benefiting by hearing the sounds of the French language. The things which are most critical, I will make abundantly clear to you. So don't worry if you don't understand what I'm saying at any particular point. Okay, I think at this point it's time for us to move into lesson 1.2. I'm going to actually perform the lesson with you this first time, both 1.2 and 1.3, since this is the first time you're doing these lessons. Hereafter, starting with lesson 1.4, these initial videos that introduce the lesson for the day will be much more brief because you will not need all this introductory explanation. I'll simply introduce the topic and maybe review a little bit from the previous lesson and then direct you to the lesson itself. Okay, let's go to lesson 1.2. Okay, so how do we get into lesson 1.2? You look at the instructions, go to lessons 1.2 and 1.3, you click on the link to 1.2, and here it is. Now remember that the instructions at the beginning are really more for students who don't have the benefit of this explanation in English as to what is to be performed, and so you can just simply skip right past that initial text. And here we are in the first section. Notice the red bar that indicates that we're changing sections. So this picture of me is in the first section, and these symbolic directions down here deal with the second section. In the first section, this symbolic direction, you may remember, takes you to a video in which I actually teach the lesson. Now I'll be teaching the lesson exclusively in French. I will not use any English in it. And be very aware that I don't expect you to understand all that I'm saying. You're still benefiting just hearing the sounds of the French language. And if you really watch carefully and listen carefully, the most critical elements you will be able to understand. You will be able to pick up. I'll demonstrate in a second. I'll make it large so we can see it easily. And here's the introductory music, performed by my son, by the way, who's doing an overdub there. So he's playing all the different trumpet parts. And now the instruction
Bonjour
begins.
et bienvenue à la leçon 1.2. Dans cette leçon,
of course,
vous allez apprendre
no
les
expectation that you
premiers
understand what I'm
60
saying
verbes
at this
les plus
moment.
employés
Just
dans
listen to the
n'importe quelle langue,
sounds.
en fait.
Now watch this.
Habiter, faire, écouter, laver et dire.
And I'll stop the video
Alors,
there.
pour vous, le plus
All the other extraneous comments, you really, I'm sure, have no idea what I'm talking about, with the exception of maybe bonjour. But when you see me do habiter, faire, écouter, laver, dire, you might be able to deduce from that there are 5 things I'm going to teach you, 5, in this case, is vocabulary words in this lesson. But even if you didn't understand that, just be patient, and you will as the video goes on. The vast majority of my comments at the very beginning, I do not expect you to understand, so don't become nervous or concerned as you're watching the video. Okay, let's go back now to the lesson itself. We move on to the second section. You see, I'm not going to do the entire lesson with you. I'm just going to comment on each of the different sections. You see in section number 2 here that we have the parrot indicating you to repeat, and the hands indicating you to perform the gestures, you to imitate what I ask you to do. Those are the 2 most important things you need to do to learn this language, is to repeat when I want you to repeat, and to use your hands and perform the gestures when I make it evident that I want you to do so. So let's take a look at this video in which I'm going to present the first 5 verbs. And by the way, what you're seeing here actually also was presented in this first video. So if you go through the entire video, you'll be much more aware of what these words mean. Habiter, faire, écouter, laver, and dire. You will have heard them numerous times by this point. But nonetheless, let's look at this video together. So this presents for us the context, as you'll see in a moment, of this of the word. It presents the gesture I want you to perform when you initially are learning this word. It will demonstrate for you a close-up of my mouth so you can see the pronunciation of the word, and then it'll put the word in a sentence. The sentence you don't need to repeat. It's maybe a little too long and asking too much of you at this point. But you can, as you look at the sentence, the images that represent a sentence that are describing this larger picture up above, you might start to get a better feel or sense for the meaning of this word. And then last of all, I review the gestures with you for each verb. So here we go. Let's just look at maybe the presentation of 3 of these verbs in this video.
habiter,
Habiter. Go ahead and repeat. Remember, repeat and do the gesture.
habiter,
I'll make it larger for you here. Habiter.
habiter,
Habiter.
habiter.
Habiter. So repeat after.
Il habite dans un appartement.
Il habite. You probably have no idea what this means necessarily, but you see there's an apartment, and there's this gesture here. May have something to do with apartment, residence, live.
Faire.
That's faire.
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 Il fait le lit.
Il fait le lit. He's doing something to a bed. Il fait
Il
le
fait
lit.
le
Il
lit.
fait le lit. Faire. Okay, now we
Habiter.
repeat the gesture. Habiter.
Faire.
Faire. Even if you don't know what faire means, if you can do the gesture and repeat the sound,
Écouter.
you're already way ahead of the game. Here's écouter. You see the context. Now the gesture. Do the
Écouter.
gesture. Écouter. Now watch the pronunciation.
Écouter.
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 Écouter. Here's a
Il
statement.
écoute
So
de la
he's
musique.
something to do with music. I think it's pretty evident
Il
what this
écoute
means.
de la
Il
musique.
écoute de la musique.
Habiter.
Habiter. Repeat the gesture, or do the gesture, repeat the word.
Faire.
Faire.
Écouter.
Écouter, etc. So those are the first 3
Laver.
of those 60 most commonly used verbs, 5 of which you'll learn in this lesson. Okay, so that's the second section right there. The third section, as we come to a new section marked off by the red bar, you see that you're to listen. So you're simply going to click on the images, which have a red border, and listen to the statements. So I click first of all on this gesture we've already seen a few times by this point.
Habiter.
It's the word, okay, it's the word habiter, habiter. Now you don't have to do the gesture. I'm getting carried away. You're only asked to listen. So here's a picture of me with an American flag and the word United States up here.
J'habite aux États-Unis.
You don't need to repeat that. That's asking too much. But what does habite have to do? Habiter. What's the suggestion here? Something to do with country.
Il habite dans un appartement.
There's that word habite again. And it's got to do with an apartment this time.
Il habite dans une maison.
Again, we hear habite, And so we have a house, an apartment, a country. You might start to get the sense that I'm talking about where a person lives. And so these images right here, as you listen to the words that correspond to them, are to give you a sense of the context, or more accurately, they provide the context and give you a sense of the meaning of the word. And then you click on it again.
Habiter.
Habiter. And you start to have maybe a grasp of what it means, etc. Go through all 5 verbs in that same fashion. And we come to the 4th section. In the 4th section, you to use your hands, do the gestures, and to say the word. Now, my introduction to you right here is much too brief. You've only heard these words 5, 6 times. If you actually have watched the entire, both of these 2 videos, which are within this lesson, you will have been exposed to this word and to this gesture and this picture 20 times maybe, easily. And so you'd go to the next one, and you might be able to come up with the gesture as well as the word, which is faire, and clicking on it, you can confirm whether you're right or wrong.
Faire.
Faire, okay? So that's what you're asked to do in this section. We go to the next, and actually the last section in lesson 1.2. We see that we're supposed to say the word, do the gesture, and we've come to a race. So we click on the race. Again, it's a video. It will accelerate as time goes by. I start it up, and I'll make it fill the screen, and here we go. Habiter. I want to say it before
Habiter.
I hear the correct answer. You heard the answer there. Faire.
Faire.
Got it. Écouter. See, I'm doing the gesture and I'm saying the word. And now I hear the correct answer. Laver.
Laver.
Okay, good, etc. And as you go through it, you'll find that it will accelerate. It'll go
Dire.
faster and faster. Okay. Well, I go back now to the lesson 1.2. Thank you. And I've already completed the lesson at that point. That's the end of 1.2. I move on to 1.3. I won't actually show you the videos this time. I'll simply comment on the activities you're to do in each section. Here you see in the first section of 1.3, you're going to watch a video in which I present these different personal pronouns, okay, referring to the person who is performing the action in a sentence, okay. In the second section, I'm to repeat the word and use my hands to perform the gesture that I was taught in this initial video, and which will be reinforced in this second video. In the third section, I'm to use my hands, perform the gesture, and to say the word, just like I did in the last lesson. Here this time, notice by the way the change in colors. Do you notice that I was wearing a red shirt in the first video, or the first lesson? The red shirts will always be used for verbs. Blue shirts will always represent personal pronouns or the subject of the sentence. So if I were to click here, I would, in fact, I'm going to try and do this first. I'm going to say tu, because I've already seen 2 videos in which this word has been presented numerous times, and I remember that this is tu. Then I click on it to see if I'm right or not.
Tu.
Indeed I was. Okay. Etc. So that's what you do in this section right here. Try to come up with a word first, then click on the image to see the video and to confirm if you're right or wrong. And then last of all, you again to perform the gesture, you say the word, but this time there's a mixture of the personal pronouns and the verbs in this section. I will say tu, and I'm going to click on it and see if I was right.
Tu.
I got it. Okay, the next one. This looks to me like dire. So I do the gesture, I say the word, I click to see if I'm right or not.
Dire.
Yes, I did the gesture correctly, I said the word correctly, and I can move on.
Dire.
Okay, thank you. And in the last, I think this is almost it. Okay, the next section, here we have a timing. You see it says 35 seconds. I have 35 seconds to say all of these words. I don't have to do the gesture this time. I just have to say the words. I'm going to make the image smaller so you can see all of the pictures at the same time. I'm going to open the stopwatch. You open the stopwatch by clicking on it and then choose Run. And remember I said earlier, right mouse click at the top and select Always on Top. Here we go. And I'm going to put it up out of the way so it's not in the way of my images, my pictures. And I have 35 seconds. Let's see if I can do this in 35 seconds. Vous, écoutez, je, tu, écoutez, habitez, elle, laver, dire, il, tu, laver, faire, tu, dire, faire, elle, faire, je, vous. Click, I did in 23 seconds, so I had 12 additional seconds. Now, of course, at this point, you couldn't do that because you haven't watched the totality of those videos that are part of lessons 1, 2, and 1.3. But once you have, and you've done these gestures, you've practiced the preceding sections of these two lessons, I think you'll be quite successful. If you find you can't perform the operation in 35 seconds, then you should go back and review, because you need to be able to keep up at a certain pace in order to, what we're aiming at doing right now is to enable you to develop the reflex, I call them linguistic reflexes, whereby you can say these words after seeing the images without any time to reflect in your native language, in English. And so the timing element is very important. If you can't keep up with the fastest time required of you, you need to go back and review. Okay, and then last of all, you see by this image right here that there is a race, which is again a PowerPoint video, and it will open up in just a moment. Here we go. And you are to try to say the word before you hear the correct answer on the screen. Je. I did it. Écoutez.
Écoutez.
At first it's very easy, but toward the end, as you'll see, I'll move it along toward the end if I can. Faire. Vous. Habiter.
Habiter.
I have much less time now. Dire.
Dire.
I have much less time which to provide the answer. Okay, I believe that's it then for this particular video. Now you can go back to the instructions related to the activities you're to do on day 2, and you can perform lessons 1.2 and 1.3 independently without my help. And I'll see you next class.